Chairman, thank you to our witnesses for appearing here today. I just want to join my colleagues in remembering our colleague Sheila Jackson Lee. She was incredible at this job. She was brilliant. She was tenacious. She was tough, but she cared about her district, cared about this country. And perhaps my favorite thing was her taking the 5-minute clock as a recommendation as opposed to a hard set time. But to the matter today, I just want to ask Colonel Parris, how many times have you worked with the Secret Service on events like this in Pennsylvania?
So year to date, we're in the low 20s.
So low 20s just this year.
Yes, in an average year, it's about the same number, but given that the election year, there's more.
And I'm sorry for not knowing this, but in your entire career, that would make it roughly how many times?
Dozens, I would say.
Okay. And do you find that there's, for each event, despite whether it's in Philadelphia or Butler, a standard process and set of procedures that are followed every single time?
In terms of the planning of it?
The consistency of the planning of the event?
Yes, I would say there is a consistency of the planning based on my experience, yes.
Not much variation. There is a set plan that the Secret Service administers with its state, county, and local partners?
That's been my experience, yes, sir.
Was there any change or deviation?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. I benefit from so many of my colleagues on this committee who served in law enforcement, served in our military. I did not. I want to ask you a question. From the time that a law enforcement officer was hoisted up, was identified by the shooter turns his rifle on him, how long between that encounter and the first shot?
So I'm glad you asked me that question, Congressman. I'd like to clarify. So it was a matter of seconds.
Okay. Because I think earlier it might have been minutes.
Correct, and I appreciate you asking that question and allowing me to clarify it on the record. When I assigned that number, which again, I don't want to get locked into a timeline of 3 minutes before, that's probably a total amount of time that he was on the roof. When the one local officer hoisted the other one up and subsequently falls, releases himself after being faced with that.
Shooter shuffles across the roof, takes his first.
He's already, I believe, close to being in his final position there.
Okay.
And I'm told it's, again, sequence of events, not a timeline based on the prior criteria laid out, but seconds after that is when the first shots rang out.
That's helpful, and the chairman and I were conferring on that because it would have been there's many failures on that day, but it would have been a critical failure if a gunman had turned his rifle on law enforcement and no one had pulled the president off the stage if it was a matter of minutes, but seconds.
Thank you for allowing me to clarify.
No, of course, and thank you for answering the question. Just going back to the general process that you've seen over your distinguished career, were there any specific challenges that you and your team faced during this event?
None of which I'm aware, to my knowledge. The planning on the PSP side, as per our interface with the Secret Service, was routine.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier that that in your experience and the standard protocol, a Secret Service engages with its state, county, and local partners. They have a plan. They work with their partners to implement the plan in the lead up to the event, the day of the event. Is there an opportunity for the state, county, and local partners to provide input, given that they have more familiarity with the area? Butler Police, you yourself have more familiarity with the area. Is there an opportunity for you to provide any feedback to the plan that the Secret Service comes to you with?
In my past experience, yes. And in my past experience, I found the Secret Service very open and collaborative. We enjoy a very strong working relationship with them. And again, there's that fine line where the deference is that they're the top comm under a unified command. It's their incident. But certainly we would endeavor to give them any local nuance that would make the planning more successful and more safe.
I appreciate that. One of the things we touched on multiple times today is the multiple lines of communication, 3 different signals that were being used, a command center. In your experience working with the Secret Service, have you seen a better implementation of a more streamlined communication setup that allows the different actors, the local PD, the county PD, the state police, to directly communicate to the command center, and then once there's a clear chain of command?
I have not. The Secret Service comms is a a very complex operation because of the worldwide environment in which they work. I'm in no way an expert in it. I think from the state and local perspective, our job is to try and integrate communications, and it doesn't have to be a super high-tech solution. We have people who can get a message, turn over their shoulder, and report verbally. We have radios that we can exchange, or we have a trooper with a radio assigned to another partner, be that a federal partner or a municipal partner, and those two radio communication systems can interface because of the human interaction.
And I'll wrap up real quickly, Mr. Chair. And it sort of makes sense in a way because you're going to have people doing traffic. They're going to, folks who you mentioned, a child went missing. You could have a firecracker. You could have a multiple number of things that don't need to rise up, which is why some level of siloing makes sense. But we need to look at how we make it a clearer chain of communication to ensure that really important pieces of information, like identifying the shooter on the roof, doesn't get delayed in moving through those channels. So thank you both for appearing here. Thank you both for your service, and thank you, Chair. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize Sheriff